Please note that Mr. Hoffman is attending virtually and due to a conflict needs to recuse himself from the first two cases on the agenda. So he's going to turn his microphone and camera off for those two cases. So the first case is RPC 35001029 at 1460 Richmond Highway. Mr. Warren, you can start, and I understand that you have Ms. Dolores Navia with the ownership group of JBG Smith also, who will speak in your 8 minutes.
Correct. Can you all hear me okay?
I certainly can, yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. I was not hearing you a couple minutes ago. Okay, can I start now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you all very much. Good morning. Good morning to the board. Good morning to Chris and the county. I'd like to just set this up because I want to leave time here for Dolores with the ownership group and JBG Smith to have some time to speak in a little bit more detail and answer any questions the board may have. But I'd like to start on page 30, which is our summary of facts. This is the which was formerly operated as the Americana Hotel, located at 1460 Richmond Highway. It's currently assessed at $50,076,100. Last year, this property was assessed at $55,207,500, and in 2023, it was assessed at $5.1 million. This property sits on 1.39 acres of land. And going into just the recent history and entitlement history of this property, if you look on the next page, on page 31, this property was approved did receive a 4.1 approval in 2023. In 2023, as we previously said, it was assessed at $5.1 million. That approval in 2023 was for 639 apartments and 3,885 square feet of commercial retail space. And following that approval in 2024 is when you saw the huge jump in assessed value from the 5.1 million to the 55,207,500, and that's using the county's guidelines of 86,000 a unit and 60,000 per square foot for retail. Now that did go down 5 million this year, and primarily what was due to that change was the county's change in their assessment guidelines for apartments from 86,000 a unit down to 78,000 a unit. The main issue that we're here to discuss is with regard to the current assessment, the recent history of the assessments of this property dating back to the 4.1 approval in 2023, is that simply put, due to the rising costs of construction and the inability to secure financing, that as of 1/1/2025, the lien date for the 2025 assessment, this property was not able to break ground and commence construction. The owners as of 1/1 did not have the final building permits and could not build as of 1/1, and so should not be assessed as if they could, which is how the county has been assessing it since that 4.1 approval. To put a little to back up just a second, we have been proactively working with the county on this issue. We actually reached out to the county and Derek and set up a meeting back on March 28th to discuss this with, I think Derek was on the call, along with Deidre and Chris, and we had the leadership team with JBG Smith to, again, discuss not only this property specifically, but the landscape of the current redevelopment market and why it's been stagnant and why construction and a lot of these projects has stalled out and financing is so hard to lock in and progress with. So again, we discussed some of those challenges. We included some of those slides that were presented on that call to the county in our package. Rents, when we're talking about rents for apartments dating back to 2019 have increased 15%, while over that same time period, construction costs have increased 40+%. So now we're talking about the current cost to develop an apartment building, a new apartment building in the county, costs in excess of $600,000 a unit, where you can go out and now purchase a fully leased, stabilized asset at $350,000 to $500,000 a unit. I don't want to linger too much on this, but on page 33, we also showed what some of the neighboring tax jurisdictions have handled similar assessments of these properties with entitlements. A few blocks to the south in Potomac Yard, the county, the city of Alexandria, and the ownership of JBG has some land parcels there as well that are ready to be developed. And are in a similar state where they're not able to build, at least currently. And the way that jurisdiction would do, the city of Alexandria, they would consider some of these holding costs for some of these projects, and it would be assessed significantly lower than the current assessment for this property. Again, before I turn this over to Dolores, I do want to just say that with regard to the current status of this property, the ownership team has been very aggressive in trying to make this development possible to commence. They've submitted amended site plans. They have worked with the county to try and restructure some of the proper arrangements for this. And again, because of the inability to find financing in the current market and the current cost of construction, it's not viable to do so. So with that, I'll hand this over to Dolores for any additional information she would like to share with the board.
Sure. Thank you, Blake. Can you all hear me? Okay.
Yes.
So as Blake mentioned, I think I'll add a couple of points here. I know we're short on time. So despite the economic headwinds, I think JBG continues to plan for the future investment and growth within the Arlington neighborhood. Obviously, you guys know and are aware of all of our properties within National Landing, and we're heavily invested there. As Blake mentioned, construction costs have gone up over 40% since our 4.1 approval, and tariffs and interest have continued to further create uncertainty for financing any of our projects. If you have been following along, we have not been able to start a project in 3 years. Thus, there's not really a lot of cranes in the Arlington area. We've advanced design for the Americana project, in particular with permit drawings to make the project more feasible. We've invested roughly $2 million in our construction sets to ensure that once we have an investor, we can actually go. However, we've been working to get the project financed for over a year, and unfortunately, the elevated construction costs, interest rates, macro uncertainties have really rendered the project non-viable. And we are doing everything we can to continue to position ourselves in the best case scenario, but in over a year, we have not been able to do so. So with that, I'll turn it back to Blake.
Yeah, and with that, we'll close our argument, but please, during the board's questioning, please use Dolores as a resource if she has very specific knowledge with regard to this project and then kind of the overall landscape with all of JBG Smith's kind of similar assets that are in this similar dilemma the last couple of years. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Roskin for the county, please.
Thank you. I'm going to give a 1-minute brief and then I'm going to leave it open for Chris to follow up. First of all, as you already know, this subject site is located in the National Landing neighborhood. It's across the street from the Amazon headquarters. Its location is premium. I mean, you can't get any better than that in Arlington County, other than Roslyn. It's a couple blocks from Costco. We have Metro all within 2 blocks of the subject. Yes, this property, the entitlements were approved back in April 2023. And the owner and them talk about they're not able to get financing or rising costs. As you know, financing costs can change on a dime. I mean, these things, they go up, they go down at any moment. Next month, things could be very different and very, very favorable. But this site plan is approved through 2026. They've spent a substantial amount of money to get this approval, and it is good through 2026. Otherwise, like I said, as of January 1, we're valuing it based on the $78,000 per unit, which for the 639 units and $60 a square foot for 3,885 square feet of retail space. I'm going to leave the rest for Chris.
It's just to kind of hop on what Ms. Roskin was saying in regards to the outlay of the project proposal. It's quite literally across the street, South East Street from Met Park, Amazon's newest HQ2. It's within 1/2 block of Penn Place, which again will be another some 3 or 4 million square feet of office. You look at the success of their projects, approximately 2 blocks to the south. They just put up 4 new towers, the Riva, the Grace, Valen, and the Zoe. Don't seem to be having any trouble with absorption. Rents are skyrocketing. There's an article today about rents are some of the highest in the country outside of California. The board's heard at least 3 or 4 other site plans this year. We do not take owner considerations, construction costs into play. This is simply the legislatively approved density approved by the county board just for the land approval. There's a de minimis $1,000 improvement value, so there's really nothing to take into account as far as improvement values. And then again, as far as the lay of the land, there's already been 3 site plans approved this year by the county board, and we have another 7 in various stages of active site plan application. So there seems to be no cooling off as far as the development appeal for the county. Given the land rates that are supported by the land rate study, I believe that's on page 9, excuse me, supporting well over $78,000 a unit for metro accessible properties like this one will be. We do believe that the county should be confirmed at a value of $50,076,100. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Questions from board members? No? All right. Ms. Ruskin, if you take a minute to wrap up.
I'll let Chris speak.
Mr. Cheeks?
Yes, ma'am. So just to reiterate again, location is prime across the street from 1 million+ square feet of office space. We see rental rates skyrocketing across some of the highest in the country. We see approvals being requested left and right, and we request that the board maintain the equity argument of the land rate that's being valued as opposed to any sort of construction costs or things that are related to the improvement value. That being said, we request the board approve the value of $50,076,100. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Warren, if you take a minute to wrap up, sir.
Yeah, just with regard to the amended site plan, there was an amended site plan that was submitted that we didn't talk about in October of 2024 to reduce the number of approved apartments from 639 to 572. That was approved and is currently approved for 572 units, which would indicate a value based on the guidelines of $44,869,700. With that, I'll let Dolores speak to some of the points with regard to location.
Yeah, with regards to location, I think Christopher, you mentioned the upcoming Penn Place development that which has been indefinitely on pause. That we work with Amazon hand in hand, and we are the developer for them, and that's not going anytime soon. And then with regards to your comment on the towers that we just delivered, we delivered those because we were able to secure financing not only 4 years ago when we started construction, but prior to that. So that's a very different time that we live in right now, and difficult to do so. Lastly, in terms of the actual forward site plan amendments and things that have been coming up from a development perspective, a lot of those site plans that I think you quoted are actually from an adaptive reuse perspective, not necessarily net new developments. And so that is just showing.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Your minute has expired. Okay, it's just among the board. That last little tidbit of information that Mr. Warren dropped, that it was reduced to 572 units, would have been helpful in his original presentation. So we could have got information on that, but without that, it's not in the package. I have some concern with that.
I'm surprised that that change was made last year. Why wasn't it at least mentioned here?
Right.
Figure that we made some difference.
We've heard this argument before about site plans and unfortunately financing options and interest rates and whatnot. And from a standpoint of equalization, I get where they're coming from, but I just don't see where we as a board can make a change.
There was something in, I'll have to dig to find it, but I did have notes concerning the change in 24. He was in the package somewhere, and I'd have to dig. But I think it said it was applied for. It didn't say it was approved. He said they approved it. The other pause I have is he had $19 million of proffers and thrown into. I'm sympathetic too.
I guess I just don't feel like it's gonna be isolated and we make an exception on this.
Even the 572.
Yeah, because like I said, had that been discussed,
I don't recall seeing anything
Earlier,
in their
right?
package, but,
Yeah, I would have liked to ask the county about that and get their side for the
Yeah,
572.
Please do.
The appellant is asking for the land value plus $1,000. So if they had requested the value for 572 and based their argument around that, I think it would have been a lot more effective. But we did not get enough time to ask about that or, properly vet that out. So I don't see anywhere where I would be comfortable moving on the site plan value.
572 doesn't come up in a search anywhere.
no, I don't, I mean, I read the whole package that they presented. A lot of pages are the guidelines that the county has, but,
right, and this, Johnny just said, it's kind of like Monday morning quarterbacking, throwing that out at the last minute, because that wasn't in the original request, because it certainly would have got my attention, but
yeah, I mean, I'm sympathetic, it was value based on land before, but, once the site plan is approved, we have to treat everybody the same.
all right, anything different?
Mhm.
All right, then I'm gonna move to confirm the county at $50,076,100.
One second.
Okay, motion is second by Mr. Panoranda, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, it is unanimous. County's confirmed at $50,076,100. Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a good day.
Thank you. Okay, we have Ms. Roskin and Mr. Harmon.
Morning.
Okay, good morning. The next case on the agenda is RPC 16039-034 on North Kent Street. The county is asked to reschedule this case to the week of July 22nd, 2020 for a secondary look due to incorrect methodology that was originally used. I understand, Mr. Harmon, you're in agreement with this request?
Yeah, no objection. That's fine.
Okay, that'll get moved to further agenda. Then, so that finishes Ms. Roskin for the day, and now we need Ms. Shuttlesworth. Okay, next case on the agenda is RPC 1900308A at 3217 North 10th Street. And we have Mr. Hoffman is in on this. Mr. Hoffman, oh, there he is. Okay, all right. We have all 5 board members here. Okay, Mr. Harmon, you can start for 8 minutes. Tell us about this property.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairwoman, members of the board. Annetta, good morning. So this property is a site plan for the former Silver Diner in Clarendon. It's site plan 467, also known as the Bingham Center. This site plan is entitled to construct 2 buildings. One is an apartment building with up to 290 units. The other building is a hotel with up to 229 keys. The site plan was approved in September of 23. At the time of approval, the owner had a partnership with Donahoe, which would see Donahoe develop the hotel as an experienced developer and operator of that type of property, and the current owner would develop the apartment building. So this site plan, again, approved in September of 23, they had started the process of developing the site plan in early 2020. So it was a long time coming, and a lot of the assumptions were based on the market as it existed at that beginning stages. Soon after that site plan was approved, Donahoe backed out of the partnership, essentially saying that they did not see the market for a new hotel building at this site. At that time, the owner, not having the expertise to develop a hotel on the site, they took the property to market trying to sell it. As of the date of value, the property was under contract, a signed purchase sale agreement to sell for $16.75 million. This value is the result of over a year-long process, an extensive marketing process. It is indicative of the fair market value of the property. The contract sale price of $16.75 million takes into account the unique aspects of this property. This includes extensive community benefits that are required, the difficult layout of the parcel. It is on a triangular shaped parcel there at the Silver Diner site in Clarendon. And it also takes into account the lack of demand for new hotel properties in this location. So taking each of these issues in turn, first looking at the required community benefits, the owner must widen Wilson Boulevard. They have a lot of street construction, a lot of street reconfiguration. Widening Wilson Boulevard, they have to improve 10th Street and Irving Street. They have to construct a new portion of 10th Street and a new alleyway as well. Additionally, they have to construct a public park on the site. They have to also contribute to the county's committed affordable housing fund. These community benefits are over and above what similar site plans in the county require. That's part of why this sale price is lower than some of the comps. So these community benefits, we know from other sales in the county, they do affect the sale price. If you're looking at purchasing a house and one house is in desperate need of a new roof, the other house is not, you're going to make adjustments for it. Same thing with this. If you have to provide all of these community benefits that are very onerous, as is the case, you're going to get a lower value. We can see this in the sale of 4420 Fairfax. Right down the road, that property required about $14 million in community benefits. That property sold for $45,000 per multifamily unit. The county, of course, is assessing them at $78,000 a unit. Not that's the discrepancies because they don't take into account the specifics of that property. Next, look, this property will house a hotel in the triangle of the lot. That makes construction very costly, and it's not primarily the structure above ground that's going to be so costly. It's the cost of constructing the underground parking garage. So instead of a typical hotel where you can just dig straight down, just straight down a square or rectangle, go down 2-3 levels and get the required parking spaces, as most developments do, this property will need to dig probably twice as deep due to that triangular shape in order to meet the parking requirements required by the site. That increases the cost of this project significantly. Finally, demand for new hotel space in the county is considerably lower as of the date of value than when this project was first proposed in early 2020. We're all familiar with the hospitality industry. It took a big dip after COVID. It's been on the recovery, but there's still not demand for new hotel space in the county. All of these factors are unique to this property, the community benefits being greater than typical, the shape of the property requiring a much more costly approach to development, and the presence of the hotel, where it essentially won't get built. It won't be the first phase, and maybe a few years down the road, it'll make financial sense. But as of the day it didn't, all of those factors are reflected in the contracted sale price that was in place as of January 1 of $16.75 million. Now, that's how the property existed as of January 1. Since then, that contracted buyer has backed out of the contract due to the project not making financial sense to them. Once that buyer backed out, the owner approached the other final bidder, who has since gone under contract at that same purchase price of $16.75 million. The new buyer, Mill Creek, I'm sure you've seen articles in the news about Mill Creek progressing this project. While they haven't closed, they have essentially taken over ownership. How have they taken over ownership? They've applied to the county for site plan amendments. Their deposit went hard in March. Mill Creek has taken over the loan payments on the current owner's outstanding loan. So for all intents and purposes, Mill Creek has taken over effective control of this property. It is set to close at that $16.75 million amount. Now, why does all of this matter if we're going to hear the county state that they assess this property at equitable rates with other site plans in the county? This matters because the sale price of the subject property by law is to be given substantial weight. We are here today not to review the county's mass appraisal methodology, but to review the county's assessment for this specific property. Now, at this point, I think a discussion on equalization is warranted. Equalization under Virginia law is there to protect the taxpayer from being treated differently from their neighbor to their detriment. Equalization by law is a safe harbor for the taxpayer. It is not a cudgel for the county to justify a one-size-fits-all approach that results in values in excess of fair market value. The Supreme Court of Virginia has said exactly this. We've provided the case law on page 25 of the court. Among other judgments by the Supreme Court, they've stated the preference for uniformity must stop short of assessment at greater than fair market value. Thus, in the name of uniformity, the county's model can produce assessment values that are greater than actual fair market value because the property's individual characteristics are not considered. This is the exact fact pattern we have here. The county applied their model, their mass appraisal model, without considering the individual characteristics of this property. When we look at those, we know that the fair market value of this property, as evidenced by multiple bids and the contract in place as of the date of value, the fair market value is $16.75 million. Again, equalization is a safe harbor for the taxpayer. The taxpayer is entitled to the lower of either equalization or fair market value. Equalization is not a cudgel for the county to justify assessments greater than fair market value. If that were the case, then what's, to conceivably stop the county from assessing every property at $1 billion? If we were to apply this logic to that hypothetical, we would say, we know it's not worth $1 billion, but by golly, if it isn't uniform, if it isn't equitable, our hands are tied. This, of course, is not the case. Equalization must stop short of assessments greater than fair market value. This property, we know the fair market value as evidenced by the sale contract. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Shuttlesworth for the county, please.
Yes, good morning, board. Good morning, Jordan. So this is site plan 467. It was approved for 290 residential units, over 16,000 of square feet of retail space, and 10-story hotel with 229 rooms. The site plan is set to expire in September 2026. The appellants provided the copy of the purchase sale agreement that was signed in December 2024 with the purchase price of $16.75 million. They also claim that the site plan is burdened by significant community benefits and triangular undesirable shape. I reached out to Mr. Harmon regarding the purchase sale agreement that was provided, and he was confirmed that that purchase sale agreement was never executed. There was a 40-day study period, and the buyer fell out during the study period. Later on, Mr. Harmon also provided a new purchase agreement that was signed after January 1. He also provided 3 amendments to this agreement that were dated as late as March 2025. The appellants used site plan 331 as comparable. The board had a chance to hear that case 2 weeks ago. The existing building on that site has a lease with no kickback clause, which is not going to expire until September 2026. And we believe that was a factor in the negotiations. The appellants also argued that the hotel industry in Arlington County continues to face challenges in the aftermath of the global pandemic. The board has heard several hotel cases this year, and based on the market data and investor surveys our department presented during those hearings, the evidence suggests otherwise. Over the past 2 years, the hospitality sector has shown a strong recovery, and it's reached its pre-pandemic performance levels, which was also reflected in over 20 basis point reduction in cap rates. During the 2025 land study, we used 6 sales again, and the median sales price per unit we came up with was $85,000, almost $86,000, and we valued this property at $78,000 per unit. Thank you.
Okay, thank you both. Questions from board members? Mr. Hoffman?
I've got a few. So Jordan, can you explain the swap agreement?
Yeah, so this assemblage has a swap agreement with Joyce Motors. So Tom Schultz owns some of the parcels at the Joyce Motors site. He also owns some at this one. Well, to make the project, those two parcels or site plans, I'm sorry, are across the street from each other. To make them feasible, what they're going to do is the owner of the Silver Diner and the owner of the Joyce Motors site plans are going to swap a couple of parcels in order to create continuous assemblage that will allow development to the highest and best use. Now, those swap, it's effective as soon as one side applies for their sheeting and shoring permits. I'm told that from the owner that that's anticipated sometime in the near future. And once one of the parties to the swap applies for that sheeting and shoring permit, it self-executes.
Okay, so I was trying to follow along with all the different RPC numbers because it's tough to kind of extract what's being purchased from just a copy of this contract without any of that color. So I guess maybe to clear it up, because Joyce Motors is a whole separate site plan. Like we're not looking at Joyce Motors, but it appears to be part of this transaction. So it gets kind of tricky to say what the 1675 exactly is for. You know what I'm saying?
I do, and I'll try to clarify. The 1675 is for the Silver Diner assemblage only. That's for that site plan number 467 and what that site plan entitles. The other site plan, as the party to the swap, is not being appealed. That's not part of the purchase sale agreement at that 16.75. So it's only site plan 467, which is the 229 key hotel and the 290 unit apartment.
Okay, and Mill Creek's buying the hotel site too, because they don't build hotels.
They're buying the entire entire site.
All right. I guess my next question was, looks like section 12.1 of the contract says no brokers have been identified in the transaction. So can you talk about the marketing process, like when it took place, who did the marketing, who did they reach out to get to this contract?
Tom Schultz, sure. So Tom Schultz is the current owner. Tom Schultz presented in front of the board last year. He's been active as a developer in the counties going back to 1972, I believe is when he started. So he was really instrumental in Arlington County with the whole RB corridor, as well as Crystal City, Pentagon City, when the metro was being built out. So he's been active, as a sales broker back in that time. He was conducting all of, the majority of the sales along the RB corridor. He has extensive experience, over 40 years, 50 years experience as a broker in the county, knows all the major players. So he handled the marketing process himself. And as soon as Donahoe fell out of the contract of the partnership, right after that site plan was approved in September of 23, Tom Schultz knew he couldn't make the project work. He's not a hotel developer. He wanted to develop the apartment. He partnered with Donahoe to develop the hotel. Once Donahoe fell out, he said, I'm going to take this to market. He reached out to all the major players in the county who are capable of developing this type of project, who are capable of closing on it, who would be interested. So he handled the marketing process, and he has the experience and the expertise to successfully market the property.
Okay. That's all I have for now.
Any other questions? Mr. Mendez?
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Greg.
I just, there was one about the interest payments that you mentioned. So how much of the interest payments is Mill Creek obligated to make? Like, what's a dollar amount there?
They took over the entire loan payments, and I can find that is in the
This
third
is prior to closing, right? Or is this post closing?
This is prior to closing. So their deposit went hard, and then right after that, they took over the loan payments on behalf of the owner.
Okay, so if there was no loan, no interest payments, it would probably be a higher purchase price, taking into account that the buyer's got to put out extra money for interest on this loan.
Potentially, it's market. I'd say the financing is reflective of market.
But Mill Creek's a cash buyer, so they would be buying a site and closing on it with cash. And they wouldn't have to put out additional money, right? So it either goes on the sales price or it goes on the, as a payment as far as carry of the land.
I think if you're looking, yes, to
Okay.
some extent, if you're looking at an all cash purchase, yes, it is different.
So if you could find that amount that
Okay.
was paid in interest prior to closing, and you said it hasn't closed yet?
Correct, yes.
All right, because I think that there was a date in this contract of like March, so maybe there was some extensions.
So the contract included with the appeal was the contract that was in place as of the date of value. Since then, we've provided the county, and I believe they provided in their response to the board, the post date of value data. So what you may be looking at is the initial contract that did fall out. The Mill Creek one was executed. Let me see when that was. Let me find the answer on the interest payments.
Okay, either that or the outstanding mortgage amount. I can calculate the interest. Sorry, Johnny, I thought of that one at the last minute.
So the PSA between Mill Creek was January 27th of 25. And that begins on page 40 of the packet.
Yep, that's what I'm looking at.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mendez.
Yeah, I just had a question for the appellant. You mentioned that Mill Creek went to the county to amend the site plan, is that right? Taking units off, what were they trying to do with the amendment?
They have an active application in front of the board, the county board. They're going to present that in September. Let's see, September 13th, I believe, is when they're going to present to the county board. I am not aware of the exact amendment proposal, the proposed changes in the amendment. So unfortunately, I can't speak to that. I did look, I did try to find that and wasn't able to in time for the hearing, but so long answer short, I'm not sure.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Okay, any final questions? No, Ms. Shuttlesworth, if you take a minute to wrap up, please.
Yeah, so again, we value this site plan the same way we valued all other site plans in Arlington. We use the same guidelines. The original purchase agreement submitted with the package did fall through. The new purchase agreement was signed after January 1 and amended as late as March 2025. Unfortunately, we do not adjust for financing risk or community developments. And I asked the board to confirm the 2025 assessment of $35,040,900. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Harmon, if you take a minute to wrap up, sir.
Yes, thank you. So as of the date of value, there was a contract in place, $16.75 million. Looking at this specific property, the county has given that contract zero weight. Obviously it's worth something. There's some consideration, and by law, it has to be given some consideration. Instead, what the county has done is used equalization as a cudgel. They've said, we're going to take this one size fits all approach. We're going to pull in sales from 2020, 2021, a completely different market, and we're going to use them to assess this specific property, knowing that there's a contract in place at $16.75 million. We're not even going to consider that. We have to consider the specifics of this property. We have to apply what the legislature and the Supreme Court of Virginia have provided as the bounds for us. They've said you have to get fair market value. Equalization is a safe harbor for the taxpayer. They're entitled to the lower of the two. It's not a cudgel for the county. Thank you.
Thank you both. Okay, it's just among the board.
Yeah, I'll start.
Go ahead.
I don't think any of this negotiations and changes and all that are really relevant to what we have in front. You know, the third amendment of this purchase agreement is saying that their closing date will be April 2026. So, you know, we're talking about contract that is just still going on, and I don't think it has anything to do with it. So if it was closed, or maybe, you know, even if it closed at the beginning of the year, I would maybe consider making any changes, but at this point, I don't think we have.
Even though they've taken over and the payments and everything else.
Right, but we don't
It's
know.
all
I mean, that's
negotiation.
all speculative, whether it's gonna close or not. I mean, we've got now, Schultz and I think it was said that in September of 2025 that they're gonna, you know, possibly go in and amend it. So it's like, are we selling it? Are we amending it? We don't have enough pieces, and that's not, I mean, I disagree with Mr. Harmon's argument that, you know, our job is to renegotiate the value of the site plan. I mean, it's out there unless it's abandoned, unless it's, you know, changed. I don't see how we take it out of equalization, how we value site plans.
Well, and the other little concern I have is the fact that all site plans are the same no matter what the costs are or the proffers or
Or the
anything
risk.
like that. And those are factors that are real money.
Right, and in the environment, I've said this before, in the environment where interest rates are dropping, the county doesn't come back through and say, oh, well, financing is cheaper, so this is worth more, we should increase it. So, you know, again, I struggle with, you got a contract that didn't happen. Now we've got a new one that's got amendments on it. You know, as Mr. Penaranda said, from March, that don't have a closing date for another year. A lot can happen in a year, including amending.
No,
the
I
site
agree.
plan.
It could definitely change it, but I just feel like the number the county uses is a little hypothetical, given every site, each site. I
I think it's still lower than the average that we have. So,
Right.
I agree with you, Mark. You know, it's almost like when we look at residential properties and it's on a busy road and, you know, they give them a 10% bump or something like that. I know that doesn't exist in the methodology as is, but it seems like this is gonna require a bit more construction and work than other projects. They have to build a public park, they have to change the roads and the streets nearby. So I don't know how much that cost. That might have been helpful, you know, at least an estimate. But I agree that, you know, there are certain outliers sometimes where I don't know what the right approach is, but it seems like this is a little bit more work than the average site plan.
Right, but it's the same work that was with the original approval of the site plan. This isn't anything new. The
approval,
situation hasn't changed.
pricing is going at 16 million. Because well, the county's not factoring that in, they simply approve it for the plan. The value ends up getting set by the market.
The assessed value is what, twice what the contract is, and I don't agree with valuing it on the contract because, you know, we have two different buyers. First contract fell out. If we had taken that as fair market value and it falls out and there's a limbo period, I mean, we moved for no reason. So I don't think we should go on the contract price, but it does, it is half the, or less than half the, or is it, yeah, less than half the value of the assessment, so.
Right, I guess I'm gonna use the same argument that Mr. Harmon just used, that, you know, how fair would it be if the county came in and said every property's worth, you know, $1 million? It's based on a contract that didn't materialize. You know, I mean, like
That-
Mr. Penaranda said, if it had closed,
That's
you'd
legitimate.
be in a different situation. Sure,
Legitimate.
wow, she only sold for 16 million, you know. But you could have a contract, the contract could have been for 8 million. You know, and would you look at it then go, well, this $8 million contract fell through, you don't know why it fell through. You don't, you know, again, the burden of proof is on the appellant. You know, to show that the county is wrong in this, and I just don't think that.
Let me just sort, there are other factors, you know, they're paying interest on the loan, they're taking over,
Sure.
which is not really.
Exactly.
As far as.
It's a cash sale, no brokers.
And, We all know, living in real estate, a contract can fall through at the closing time.
Right.
All that still indicates, given the buyers and the cash elements are, given the price that's being agreed to in two different buyers, it's still substantially lower than what the county is putting out there and not considering any other cost of development. I just, it doesn't feel like the price is right.
Okay, Mr. Hoffman, do you have anything?
I'm agreeing with everything I hear you guys saying. There's just too many questions about this contract. If it was assessed at $100 million, I'd say we're probably do some sort of reduction here. But I don't really see evidence that this was widely marketed. I mean, I didn't see this thing get marketed. Our office is right down the street. I get 1 million offerings for properties in Arlington, Alexandria, DC all the time. I didn't see this one. There's no broker attached to it. Normally we'll get, when the argument is it was offered and here's a contract, we'll get a matrix that shows the bids, or we'll get some sort of general discussion of the bidders and all that. I mean, for all I know, Tom Schultz went to his buddy and tried to work out a deal because they were in extreme distress with this loan, right? We don't know the situation around it. It'd be a little bit clearer if there was like a broker attached to it and they could come on and say, we went out to 100 different parties. We had a 90-day period to evaluate offers, and this is the one we landed at. It was the highest bid. But I don't know any of that. All I know is that there's a bunch of different properties that were assembled. There's a lot of kind of complication post-closing as far as having to get the subdivisions right. We've got an active site plan, I guess, amendment that we don't know anything about. For all we know, they're going in and doubling the number of units. And they're not going to close until they get approval from the county board. So there's just too many questions. And then in general, I think the number of 35 million that the county has is in line with other residential properties that this buyer has purchased in Arlington, like in recent history. So I think they paid 112,000 a unit in the ground for Madera right down the street. This is a better site, better located. If you say the hotel is worth nothing, 35 million is 120,000 a unit for what's approved right now. So that to me, that's not that far out of line. So I can go with what the county has right now.
I vote for it.
Then I'm going to move to confirm the county at 35,040,900. Second. Okay, Mr. Penaranda, the second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. The county's confirmed at 35,040,900. Okay, and the same players on the last case is RPC 1405946 at 4100 Wilson Boulevard. Mr. Harmon, you can start with your 8 minutes on this property.
Yes, thank you. So this is the Origin Apartments. These are the apartments next to the Ballston Quarter. It's a 406 unit property. The 2025 assessment for this property represents a 15% increase over the past couple of years. Now to start, I want to discuss the county's column E on the test page. This is what the county calls their reconstructed 2024. If you look through the financials included with the I&E, what the owner did is they just included their 2024 financials. They didn't fill out the county's form. And so because of this, the county reconstructed their 2024 financials. Unfortunately, this column E, the way we looked at the owner's financials came up with a lower number than what the county's done. This appears to be, if you look at the I&E, it's in the appeal. Essentially what we did was we took the final NOI reported. This is on page 42 of the appeal. You take that NOI reported, you add back to that real estate taxes, and that's where you get that value. You add back real estate taxes, and we got to $12,067,998 as the reported 2024 NOI. If you look at their financials, I think I can tell where the county made the error. They submit their 2024 financials as a consolidated form with certain line items not broken out in detail. And then after that consolidated form, they submit them again with the detail. So the initial non-detailed 2024 financials just have taxes as a line item, a catch-all. If you go on down to the detail, you'll see those taxes are not just real estate taxes. It also includes personal property taxes and local taxes. So I think that may be where the discrepancy is the county may have taken the NOI and just added back all taxes instead of just real estate taxes. However, if you take the NOI, add back just the real estate taxes, you get to 2024 NOI of $12,067,997. This value is below both the assessed NOI and the county's test NOI. We've seen on prior multifamily properties, the county's review comes in below the actual 2024 NOI. That's been consistent. On this one, it's above. The main driver of that is the county's assessment and test both rely on using a 5% vacancy and collection loss rate, when in reality at this property, there's a documented history with vacancy and collection loss averaging 5.85% over the past 3 years. In 2024 alone, vacancy and collection loss was 6.14%. So 3 years in a row, this property has had vacancy and collection loss in excess of the county's rate. It's consistent, it's documented, it's above the assessment's 5% rate. Ignoring this, of course, we know there is a Virginia statute specific to residential properties. That statute states actual income, expenses, and any resulting loss due to vacancy and collection must be considered. So there's a direct statute for assessing this type of property. It says you have to consider actual. You can't just say, well, it's equalized. We're going to, use an incorrect vacancy and collection loss. It's going to result in an assessment that's greater than fair market value, but it's equalized, so therefore it's fair. Again, going back to last case, equalization is not a cudgel. It's not a justification to say, we know this property has been averaging 5.85% vacancy and collection over 3 years in a row, but we're going to overassess it because then it's equalized. No, you have to get to fair market value. Fair market value will be looking at this property's actual vacancy and collection loss. 6.14% again in 2024, 5.85% over the course of the past 3 years. Applying that 3-year average, the lesser of the two figures, to the county's assessment gets to and keeping everything else equal, the county's cap rate, county's income, everything else, just increasing that vacancy and collection loss rate to reflect the actual operations of the property that have been consistent over the past 3 years. That gets to a final value of $215,660,000. Now, finally, we've discussed the county's cap rate support for multifamily properties to a large extent in prior cases. Just going to go through a quick recap for this property. The county's base cap rate, and a base cap rate is what you're going to use when you're comparing to outside sources. A base cap rate is the unloaded cap rate. That means a cap rate that hasn't been loaded with the tax rate. The county will only present loaded tax rates. In order to compare those to outside sources, you have to remove the tax rate. You have to remove the replacement reserves that Arlington County includes in that loaded cap rate. Doing so, you'll see the base cap rate, and this is what you'll use to compare to surveys, other sales. The base cap rate for this property is 4.3%. How does this compare to the sources the county themselves have said support their cap rates and that they relied on to develop their cap rates? Well, this cap rate, again, 4.3%, compares with 5% on the low end of the 3 surveys, the 3 investor surveys of the county cited as support. That's PwC, that's RERC, CBRE. All 3 of them have a consensus that the low end cap rates for multifamily properties in this area is 5%. Again, that compares with the assessment of 4.3%. So the assessment's 70 basis points below the consensus of the market. Now, if it's not the surveys that were purportedly relied on and purportedly supported, which we now know they don't, what could it be? The county does state there was a sale that supports their cap rate of 4.3%. However, they haven't provided what sale this was. If you look at their sales list that they provided with the guidelines, you have to make sure the sale was an actual comparable. The subject property is a 406 unit building. That's a large apartment building. The county sale comps, they show sale comps with 4 units, a sale comp with 8 units, a sale comp with 9 units, a sale comp with 10 units. These sale comps are not even in the same ballpark as the subject property. Those are more mom and pop operations. This is going to be a large outfit that's going to have to take down this 406 unit building. If you're deriving a cap rate from the sale of a 4-unit apartment building and applying it to the assessment of a 406 unit building, that's plain error. That's manifest error. That's ignoring all controlling evidence. The subject property would require a very different buyer than those sale comps. Applying, that cap rate from those 10-unit sales, 9-unit sales, 8-unit sales, 4-unit sales, it's just not, it's not in accordance with generally accepted appraisal practice due to the assessment's cap rate being 70 basis points below the investor consensus of 5% base. We respectfully request the board, dig into this cap rate a little more, see that the market sales that are comparable are closer to that 5% cap rate that the surveys have come up with. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Shuttlesworth for the county, please.
Yes, thank you so much. So before I get started, I just wanted to direct the board to page 33, which shows the financials submitted by the appellants. And this is for the year 2024. So the board can take a look. All right, with that being said, this is a high-rise apartment. It was built in 2017 with 406 units. It is 2 blocks away from the Boston Metro. The amenities include fitness room, outdoor fitness deck, work lounge with study nooks, outdoor terrace, rooftop swimming pool, and the club room. The property was inspected in May 2023 by Lori Roskin. Looking at the potential rent reported for the past 4 years, we see a consistent upward trend. The 2024 vacancies and concessions was at 6.14%, which is slightly above our stabilized figure. However, the EGI shown is still, the EGI reported for 2024 still shows almost 3% increase. Moving down to the expenses, they managed to decrease them quite significantly based on the internal financials. The management fees went down from 5% to about 2.7%. So looking at the OPEX between 2021 and 2023, I apologize, was trending at between 24% to 26% ratio. The OPEX ratio in 2024 shows 20%. This is a large swing. So when we performed the test, we stabilized the OPEX and we used 21% ratio. Our tested OPEX is higher than the OPEX used by the appellants in the pro forma. Our OPEX is also above the median OPEX reported for the past 4 years. And this is something interesting. So typically when we look at the pro forma submitted by the appellants, specifically by Wilkes Artists, what we see, they use the same potential rent in the pro forma that was reported in the most recent year. They typically also use the same OPEX as it was reported in the prior year. However, in this case, they use the same potential rent, but they decrease their OPEX. So was, I guess, a little bit of, they changed their methodology with this case. In respect to the cap rate, again, we relied on the third quarter 2024 commercial real estate investor publications such as RERC, CBRE, PwC, and the 2024 sales that occurred in Arlington County, which we were able to verify. These sales produced an unloaded cap rate between 4% to 6.5%. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from board members? Mr. Hoffman?
I'm just curious if Anetta, where does this fall in like the most valuable apartments in Arlington range? Is it like top 10%? It looks like it's a high number per unit. I just want to see if it's like up in the, number
Well,
one,
it
number
was.
two.
Mhm.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, that's okay. It was built in 2017. It offers wide range of amenities. I would say these amenities are comparable to those amenities in newly built developments. It is not a brand new building, obviously, but I think it's a competing property with newly built apartment buildings, such as I guess Grayson Riva,
Yeah.
which is that one is brand new. This one isn't. But again, they offer fitness room, outdoor fitness deck, work lounge with study nooks, which is pretty desirable in the past few years. Outdoor terrace, rooftop swimming pool, and a club room.
Do you
So
remember what the Grace and Reba are per unit assessment? It's over 500,000, right?
I don't remember. I can check that. I
All right.
don't remember.
That's all I had.
Okay, any other questions? All right, no further questions, Mr. Hoffman?
No, thanks.
All right, thank you, Ms. Shuttlesworth. If you take a minute to wrap up.
So again, we're looking at a property that has demonstrated an upward trend in potential rent, effective gross income, and at the same time, they were able to manage down the operating expenses. We tested less than 1% increase in potential rent, which was very conservative. Our tested OPEX is above the median OPEX reported historically at the property, and it's also significantly higher than what they are projecting. Our tested NOI is below the NOI reported in 2024. I asked the board to confirm the assessment of 218,195,200. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Harmon, if you take a minute to wrap up.
Yes, thank you. So the current assessment is greater than what was reported for 2024 NOI. And again, that appears to be some of the other taxes were added back in incorrectly. So the operating expenses reported on that column E on the county's test page, the 2024 reconstruction, those are actually lower than what they should be. If you look at the actual financials, take the NOI, add back in just real estate taxes, you get a reported 2024 NOI of $12,068,000. Now, the discrepancy largely between the assessment, the test, and the actual reported is due to that higher vacancy and collection loss actually experienced at the property. It's averaged 5.85% over the past 3 years. The counties applied their equalized rate to that, but again, that misses the mark. That does not consider the property specifics of this property as required by that specific statute. The legislature took the time to enact a separate statute, which is no easy task. It's time consuming, it's burdensome, but it was for a purpose. And this is the purpose of actually looking at the specific property. Thank you.
Okay, thank you both. Okay, it's just among the board members. Here, folks.
Yeah, I think this is pretty stable. The only thing I was doing is I was looking at all numbers, GPI, EGI, expenses, and as a percentage of for the past 4 years, the expenses have been more than 23%. So, and the county used originally 23% expense rate. So on the test, that's what I did. I went from 21 to 23%.
That's what I did too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that decreases some, but not as far as with the economists requesting.
Sometimes this, I'd say this a lot. The percentage, you got to look at the dollar amount. So where's the dollar amount in comparison? It's a percentage of, what they're using of income. So what you increase it to, I'm looking at the original assessment was 3.6 million. And they reported,
The test fee would be lower than that. Anyway, it would be 3,537,000.
And 23 was 3,000,005. Yeah. It's not, expenses aren't going.
right,
What's your fund?
On the expenses, 3,537,000. So the NOI would be 11,842,839, bringing the total value to 213,384,500.
and what did you increase the expenses to?
23%.
Mr. Hoffman?
Yeah, I'm with Jose. It just seemed like a big jump from last year. And I think that kind of puts us in between. I was kind of looking at the appellant's pro forma numbers, which is got an extra $500,000 in NOI and at the county's cap rate, and that comes out with a little bit lower, 212 million. But I'm okay with Jose's number as well.
You okay?
Yep, that sounds good.
Kind of it?
Okay, I'll go ahead and move we reduce the assessment to 213,384,500 by increasing the expenses, the test, to 23%.
Anyone a second? Mr. Yates is a second. All in favor? Aye, opposed? There's unanimous. The assessments reduced to 213,384,500 based on increasing the expenses to 23% in the test column. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay, that completes the agenda for today. Anybody have any other business? No? Okay, then we will stand adjourned at 10:08. We'll not be meeting next week. We'll be reconvening on Tuesday, July 22nd, virtually at 9 a.m. Thank you, everybody.